you give them a family and they don't want to leave, and now they're yours forever.
I would say that two of the three things you just said is a misunderstanding.
Really?
But I think, just as an overview, the concept for you to consider, the Mosaic civil law is a huge document. And it addresses many topics.
Yeah.
And not only slavery, but how to treat a foreigner.
Yes.
How to treat any foreigner. And the way you treat the text is like looking at the civil code of the United States and looking at the law concerning landlords. Right? Landlord rights. And then making assumptions about the renters. Whereas there are certain laws that aren't specifically addressing landlords, that address the renters. So what I'm saying is, in the moral civil law, there are many laws that address the rights of a foreigner that apply even to the slave. So we can't just look at the law as it says how the slave owner, what his rights are. You have to also consider what the whole law says in regards to even a foreigner.
If that foreigner is property that can be passed on to somebody else, that's a problem. I don't care what rights they have other than that.
But like Matt Slick said tonight, if your property runs away, would you have to return it? The Bible says yes. If your property is taken, it must be returned. If the ox runs away,
yes,
it has to be returned. However, that Mosaic law says that if your slave runs away, it doesn't have to be returned.
So I actually addressed that in the video, and there's a potential subtle disagreement there that we'll save for another time. Here's the thing. When I point out slavery is immoral, Christians tend to agree with me. It's wrong to own people's property. If I was God, and I was giving people a list of instructions about how to live their life and what's moral and immoral, I could maybe understand not saying slavery is immoral. I could maybe understand not saying thou shalt not own another human being. I completely understand it, because that should be really easy. What I can't understand is not that there's an omission, not that the Bible doesn't talk about it, is that it specifically says you can have slaves, you can treat them this way, here's how you buy them, they are your property, you can pass them on. Every single one of those things is something that I would identify as immoral. And most theists that I talk to, Christian or otherwise, seem to think the same thing. This is why there were four guys. There was a lot of, I was like, you four sort it out, and then whoever says, yes, this is the correct answer, come back.
Get back.
Yeah, because I could argue with all four. So, saying that if a slave runs away, doesn't have to be returned, says nothing about whether owning another person's property and how you treat them while they are your property is moral. That's like when Paul wants, this particular slave to be set free. That's not a condemnation of slavery. It's noted. And so you have this Old Testament text that could say, thou shalt not own another human being as property. You can work off your debts. You have to treat each other with kindness. Instead, it says you can own people's property. You buy your slaves from the heathen that surround you. You treat your Jewish slaves different from your heathen slaves. And then you get to the New Testament, and Jesus could have said, hey, you guys, when I inspired you to write this, you got some stuff wrong. You falsely gave the impression to people for all of these years that God is okay with you owning people as property. We need to fix that. But instead, the only comment that Jesus made about it was, slaves obey your masters, even the cruel ones. And my position is that a moral being, the only answer any morally correct being could give to slaves is do everything in your power to free yourself and every other slave, because you are better and do not deserve to be. And I don't know how anybody could claim to have a morally superior position and not say that. And the fact that the most moral being doesn't ever say that and actually says the opposite is incredibly troubling.
I know you gotta go. But I look at it as the Bible is okay with slavery as it is outlined in the Mosaic Law.
Mm-hmm.
And it was so much, there was advantages to it so much to the point where people of foreign nations would rather be a slave under that code than live outside of the nation of Israel. Foreigners actually would prefer it.
Does the fact that one person is willing to be a slave tell you anything about whether or not owning people as property is moral?
Well, it tells you okay, under the veil, right? Under the veil.
Yeah.
Okay, we put the veil on, and you know what that foreigner is living like compared to the slave over here in this nation where it was prospering. Okay, under the veil, many would choose that.
Okay. Under the veil of being
in that context,
under
at
the
that
veil,
time,
under the veil of ignorance, we have a situation. You're going to come in either as a slave or as a slave owner. Which system is preferable? One that allows the slave owner to beat you, or one that doesn't?
Under that law, you miss. There are excellent answers to that.
This is
to
a
that
simple
claim.
question.
An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth.
Yes, leaves the whole world blind.
It's a principle.
I don't support eye for an eye.
If I beat you as a slave and hurt your finger, I get it in return. It's a principle. Matt, it's a principle. There are many.
If you
never
beat
heard an
me
excellent
and I
Christian.
die, you're punished. If you beat your
Dude,
slave,
that's the principle. The principle is an eye for an eye. If you beat your slave and he dies,
it doesn't apply to slaves. The rules are special for slaves. Exodus
you have to
21.
look at the whole law.
Specifics override general every time.
The specifics are general rules.
No. If there's a general rule and there's a specific rule, the specific overrides the general. If the general rule is eye for an eye, and the specific is except for slaves.
No. If you beat your slave, you have to look at the whole thing.
I've not only looked at the whole thing, if you
No,
actually
you have to look at
watch...
the whole Mosaic Law.
Why?
Because it all applies.
How? What about the... Unless later on in the
This is your favorite topic.
Unless later on in the Mosaic Law it says, by the way, this is wrong, you haven't negated it.
All the laws that apply to how to treat a foreigner apply to the slave.
Prove it.
Prove it doesn't.
We're done. I'm going to get my laptop.
Prove that it doesn't.